everyone, Linda here, the scrapbooking photographer. Today we're going to be embracing imperfection, but we're working with a very old photo which is going to go in the album of me, and it's also part of the Pour Your Way Into Our Hearts YouTube hop. So this dog here, for those of you who don't know me, I love dogs. I have 3 golden retrievers and I've had golden retrievers for 20 years, but when I was a child we weren't allowed any dogs because my older brothers were allergic to them. But this dog here, his name was Twinkie, and I used to love visiting Twinkie in Australia. We were in New Zealand, and you'd go over and see and stay with my mum's sister and her family, and Twinkie was their dog, so I was very happy spending time with Twinkie. So my dad took this photo. As you can see, the dog is a bit blurry, but I don't care. It's a beautiful photo because A, my dad took it, B, it's got Twinkie and me, and C, it shows the beginning of a great love of a life with dogs. So that's what we're going to be working with today. I'm going to use a sketch from debruin, which is this week's sketch for Mixed Media Mayhem. So I'm going to do some mixed media in the background, and I'm also going to do it on a white background with just black and white to go in with the photo to meet the criteria for the White with One challenge. And I'm also going to give it one name for the one word challenge with Soul Scrappers, which is this month either S, R or U. So I'll be working with S, and you'll have to keep watching to see what I choose to be the word. So that's the photo. I'll pop that to one side because everything we're going to do in the background comes first, really. So I've got some different stamps up because along with the one word challenge, half of the background needs to be covered in strips. So I'm going to do strips along the background as opposed to the circles that are in the sketch. And so I've got some borders out. This one's going to be perfect. And maybe some film strips. Some circles stamped perhaps to break it up a little bit, some other borders to choose from, and some other text things. So I've got a variety there. Oh, the other challenge I'm going to meet is the Iron Crafter challenge, which is to use ribbon or twine. So I've got some ribbon, I've got some twine, I've got my shimmer trim, so I've got those as well. So I'm going to just file everything to one side as we go. And then I've got all of these papers which are black and white, some of them on both sides, others on just one side, and I have some vellum paper which I adore, so I'll hopefully be able to use that somewhere. And I have the papers from the pack of For Always, which are predominantly black and white with a little bit of gold dark brown in there. Okay, so we'll put those aside, and we're getting down to the nitty gritty now because we're looking at stencils. It goes with that, and our white background. So after looking at those big beautiful stencils with the different designs on them, I've actually gone for the smaller square one so that I can just highlight a few little squares here and there. So I've gone top left and bottom right with my blending brush and the black ink, and then I'm also going either side of what's going to be the photo and the strips of paper behind. So then with the heart border stamp, which I just love, I'm going to come in from the left hand side down the bottom of where the picture's going to go and top right. And I'm going to try and combine the papers similarly as we put them in. So using this heart stamp again down the bottom and the top, I'm just putting some scrap paper either side and basically masking the edges of the stamp because I only want a section of it. And having torn the scrap paper, rather than using the harsh edges, means that it fades in and out a little bit nicer and a bit softer. So then with my pile of papers, I can go through and audition which ones I want. Some of them have quite broad and big patterns, which won't work so well on a page like this where they're going to be fairly narrow strips going up either side and above and below. So I'm picking the patterns that have more general, small patterns, and some of the zip strips work well for that as well. I'm also making sure that I'm getting a mixture of dark and light, and of course that vellum. So then I can bring them into the page and just have a bit of a look, see how they go. And straight away I decide that this dark piece needs to be distressed, but I actually end up ripping it in the end because the distressed side raises it a little bit more than I want it to be raised, so I end up ripping it, as you'll see here. It also gives a more varied edge than the distresser. So as I work my way up the page, I'm trying to mix the darks with the lights, and I think that helps them show up against each other. I'm also combining the ripped edges with the straight edges, and at some point I bring in a piece of vellum, and it's really just a matter of trying the different pieces and seeing what you like and what you don't like, and giving it a mix. I don't want to cover all the mixed media underneath, but I do end up covering a lot of it, unfortunately. So the zip strips, when I cut them in two, I can use half down the bottom on the right and half on the top left, or vice versa, and that just gives it a bit of balance, I think, to have some at the different places where you can see them. So this one I'm going to bring in along the bottom, and that will end up being the baseline. I do put this piece in, but it's only temporary. And that, of course, is when I decide to start sticking things in. So I put that piece down first and then put the long piece in on top of it, which gives me a place to start from the bottom moving up. Now, I don't want to cover those hearts all the way, but I know that the picture is going to come over the middle there too. So I want different papers coming out the left and different papers coming out the right. So I'm bringing some vellum in here and just cut it down a little bit. I think the vellum needs to go against something dark so that you can see, get the effect of the vellum with it coming through. And you can see I just had to shorten that piece of dark paper there because it was poking out the other side of the photo. So then I've got some dark bits in the zip strip. So the stripes next to the circles is a good mixture rather than having circles next to circles. And I'm doing the same up the top with the other piece of zip strip, tucking it in between, behind the ripped piece. So I can see now when I put the picture in that I'm actually going to need to mount the picture to get good effect because it gets a little bit lost with its white border. So I'm just putting in the top piece now, and then I'll bring that other zip strip all the way across so that we've got a good anchoring at the top and at the bottom, and then the other torn pieces in between. The other thing you'll notice that I've done with the torn pieces is at the top I've faced them upwards, and at the bottom I've faced them downwards. And in the middle, that's where there are some straight pieces just to make the change. So then I've got a couple of little gaps that I want to cover with a different sort of pattern, and I found that extra zip strip. So I've popped it in the top right, and that's when I decide to take that out of the bottom and move it further up. It needs to be ripped, and then I can put it in the other way up to what the one is that's already there. So just mixing it up a little bit, and then I want to bring another piece of that other zip strip in here down the bottom left. And so that kind of looks quite balanced to my eye. So then I'll mount the picture with a nice strong black frame around the outside. And then I do decide to distress the outside of this mount, and it does work better here because it's bringing out the white core of the cardstock and just blending it in better on top, going on top of those other torn pieces of paper. But I will also use some 3D tape to raise it up off the page a little bit, give it a little bit of depth, and also some room for those ripped pieces and the different layers to stand out a little bit apart from the image. And then I decide to add a couple of things to the top and bottom where we've got that stenciling, and I really want to bring in some of these paw prints, but it's an absolute disaster. I try using some of this paste, which was once paint, so it's kind of got quite thick, but it doesn't work at all. And then once I've done those two that you see there, I realise I can't do any more because it will smudge the other ones, because on this stencil there's only 2 paw prints wide, so it doesn't really work. So I come up with a plan to cover them by making these long tags, popping them in an embossing folder, and then sanding the tops off them. So that just gives them a little bit of dimension and kind of blends in with the theme of the paper, of what we've got on the page. And then I can thread some white ribbon through the tops of both of them, which meets the criteria for the Iron Crafter this month, and then that covers the dilemma there of the mucky paw prints and also where some of the ink got in the wrong place. And using 3D tape, I can raise them as well a little bit off the page, because with the ribbon underneath the join at the top there, it needs to come up, otherwise it bends the tag on the page. And then I'll do the same down the bottom and cover those 2 mucky paw prints down the bottom as well. I've left some quite long tails on these ribbons. I can trim them later if I want to, but I quite like the long tails, adding just another texture to the page. And the white on white, whilst they're both white, you can still see the different colours. And then I go away and make the name out of my thin cut alphabet. So now you can see what I'm calling the page, because I was totally smitten with this dog, and therefore totally smitten with dogs for the rest of my life, really. So I thought this was a good name for this page, given that we had to use one word for the one word challenge, starting with either S, R or U. I have moved the white tails off the tags, but I will bring that one back down so that you can still see the hearts on the left there. But where they've been stuck, it's pretty easy to rub the tape runner off with your finger, and it doesn't leave any marks or anything. So I trim one short, but it's quite good bringing just the bottom of that tail over the tip of the paper so that we can see it a little bit easier. I found a black heart in some of my embellishment packets, so I've popped that there, and then I've just gone round and put a few dots of black onyx stickles in different parts, and I still want something up that top right hand corner, so I'm using my thread, which I guess is twine, maybe, Tara, for Iron Crafter. Anyway, I'm bringing it in with some long stitches that I saw somebody do on another video last week, so I thought I would copy that idea because I really liked it. So I'm going to do 3 long stitches that are different sizes, and I have to be careful because those stickles are still wet, so I don't want to smudge them at all. So I'll come through from the bottom, put a little bit of sticky tape over the tail of the thread at the back, and then making sure it's straight, come down the other side, trim it off and tape that bit down as well. So these look good in 3s, just like the stickle drops, so I'll come through with a 3rd one at the top, just making it a little bit shorter, and that will fill up that corner really nicely, I think. And then we're just about done. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I really enjoyed putting this page together, and thank you so much for joining me. I hope you get a chance to do some crafting yourself, and if you'd like to copy this page, feel free to do so. Happy crafting, everyone!